Welcome, ladies, to the Real Estate Investor Show, providing inspiration, strategies, and insight to empower women investors to live balanced and financially free lives. Now, here are your co-hosts, Liz and Andressa.
Stephanie Cabrillo is a buy and hold investor of single-family homes and duplexes in central Connecticut. Although she started investing a few years ago, she currently has $1.4 million in assets and a vacancy rate of less than 1%. She is a lawyer by trade that turned to real estate to improve the quality of her life. On today's episode, we cover so much with Stephanie, including how newbies can move through the fear of doing their first rehab project, how to mitigate the mistakes on that first deal, how to automate and systematize your business, and the number one tip to have success with a virtual assistant. Welcome back, ladies. This is Liz.
And this is Andressa.
And you are back listening to the Real Estate Investor Show, and always wonderful to be here with all of you. So thanks for listening. And we want to welcome Steph to our show. Hi, Steph.
Hi.
And we're going to jump into her story in a moment. But before we go there, just wanted to share a little bit, Andressa, with you, with what's happening and, what's kind of coming up for us in our business and our life.
What's going on?
Where do I start? No.
Alphabetical order. Chronological order.
So we have an office building. It was one of our actually first buildings we purchased many moons ago. And we, at first we thought we were going to have one tenant, and we ended up splitting the building up. And now that's very popular, shared space. But we kind of did it before it was popular or sexy, to be honest with you. We kind of did it out of necessity, really, to be honest with you, about 8 years ago. So anyway, it's been shared space and about 30 offices, and it's worked well over the years. But, we kind of took it to a certain point. We ended up hiring a third-party manager to come in, help us manage the building. Mm-hmm. And they had this creative idea to call it the Hive. And they're creating these in a lot of different locations in Pennsylvania, New Jersey. And basically the concept will be where, there is a little more of that kind of fun element. There's going to be like a pool table and, there'll be, a happy hour on Friday. I had to check with our insurance, make sure that was okay. But, all those sort of things. So people start to create more buy memberships, not just, the traditional office. So it's something we've always wanted to do. But because we were kind of tapped out with our focus, we took our building to, where we could take it. And I say that for a couple of reasons. I say sometimes with the real estate that you have, whether it's commercial, whether it's residential, it doesn't really matter. But I find that sometimes you can take it to a certain point, mm-hmm. and it really makes sense to sometimes either have someone else help you with it or manage it for you, or just bring some fresh eyes to it.
Absolutely. And
it's really been helpful. We're like, wow, that all great ideas we wish we would have thought of. And I said to my husband, as we talked about it, he's like, we're so, we just, our focus is in different areas. Mm-hmm. So you can't focus on everything. So the importance of partners, and we're really partners with the management company in the venture. So it's really a 50-50, which is they win, we win, so to speak.
That's so cool. And I think that it's great that you're talking about, you cannot focus on that part. Let other people take care of it, be creative, implement, and you create those partnerships. And this is a very cool trend. It embraces creativity and increases the productivity. It's so cool. I think it's going to be great. We can do an episode on just creative ways to improve all of
that is a really good idea.
Work environment.
Absolutely. Or just increase your revenue in your buildings in different ways. The washing machines, things like that. But we can go down that another day.
Another episode, yes.
So Steph, welcome again to the show. Really happy to have you here on our episode of. We're going to be going into a lot of different, hopefully, directions. We have a lot of questions, prepared as we looked at your bio and just the great things you're up to. So, for all the ladies listening, what compelled you to get involved in real estate investing? If you could tell us a little about your journey to where you are today.
Yeah. So I really got started in real estate. It was 2012, and it was out of the desire to not pay rent, to be honest. It was, I was in a position, I think it's never a pleasure to pay rent, but particularly at that time in my life, it was just not something that I wanted to take on, and I had to find another way to live in an environment that I felt good. So it was actually kind of an flippant suggestion by my parents, like, hey, why don't you buy a duplex and have somebody else pay your rent? And I cannot tell you that one suggestion completely changed my course of action. I'm a lawyer by trade, but I knew even in law school that being a lawyer was not the long-term direction for me. So I was always looking for an alternative. And when I found the duplex, and I actually still live in this property today. It's my first purchase. It was 6 years ago. And it was, one of the best decisions that I ever made. I continually love this house, this asset, this, new strategy and way of living. But I was actually looking for a turnkey property. I didn't know that people invest in real estate. I didn't know that what I was about to do was investing in real estate. So I was just looking for a place to live that was comfortable and affordable. And every place I saw, the numbers just didn't work for me. I might as well have been paying rent. So I found a condemned duplex. This was after about 6 months of searching. I found a condemned duplex. It was in the center of my hometown, which is a great suburban town in Connecticut. Property values are strong. They're fairly well insulated from recession, as well as it can be. And it was condemned. There were no floors. There were no ceilings. It had water damage.
Love that.
Yeah. And I walked into it and I was like, this is my house. I just know it. I know it. And my real estate agent, thank God I had him. He's an investor himself. And he told me about the 203K loan. So I got into a pretty large project for my first deal. It was about a $50,000 renovation between the two sides. And I bought it for $133. So I was all in for about $183. And when I was done, it's now worth about $250 or $260. So that really exposed me to the power of forced appreciation through renovations. And I was able to do a refinance on the property fairly quickly and get out of my FHA loan. And that right there also gave me a great building block for the rest of my career, because the 203K loan gives you renovation experience, but in a fairly safe environment, because you're doing it under the supervision of the bank. Because this was a large construction project, I had a consultant, a rehab consultant. So I really had someone overseeing the contractor. And I was very lucky that it was a smooth renovation process. But that's how I got started. And then I think I had no vacancy for a year and a half. And when I first had my first vacancy and realized, oh my gosh, now I'm paying rent again, that's when I truly realized the power of real estate and went on to buy my next property and keep them filled, as often as possible.
Awesome.
That's how I got my start.
I love to hear that when you saw the condition of the property, you had the vision, how would that look like? Because sometimes people will go inside the houses to rehab and say, oh, I don't like this paint color, I don't like this handle, or very small things.
Yeah.
But it's hard for your first deal to really figure it out and really bypass your fears and things like that. So I'm curious to know your mindset at that time. What did you do that helped you out to overcome any fear or any concern about what could have happened?
Oh, I think the best thing I had going for me was I was totally naive to the potential consequences that could have happened. I remember my mortgage broker, when I went in, I was like, I found the house, we need to do a big renovation. And he's like, wow, you're really brave to take that on. I was like, what are you talking about? What could go wrong? And so I'm very grateful for that naivete at that time in my life. And it was a great learning experience. I go into things a little bit more eyes wide open now. So I'm not as naive, but I do think that you're absolutely right. There's so many places that people can second guess themselves, or, the analysis paralysis that comes with overthinking. And so I think for me, I had a team in place that was they were competent, they were supportive, and they were able to get me to the finish line where all I needed to do was really decide, what finishes did I want? And of course I needed to be financeable, but I didn't actually make that project successful. My team did. And I've used that as a philosophy going forward, is making sure that the team around me, whoever those professionals may be, I want them to be competent and serving me in the best way possible, so that when I have a question, I can move forward. And, things like what you guys are doing and putting on podcasts and having people with experience share those experiences with others. Now, all of a sudden, information is available. So I've been eating up as much information as possible. And I think that's really helpful too.
Yeah, you never can stop learning. I'm curious to circle back on the rehab consultant, because if people had a rehab consultant for their first project, I mean, we would have really minimized the mistakes and all the things that happen. I mean, what an awesome idea. So that obviously is connected to the type of loan you must have had. But I'm curious, what were the key things? So again, whether or not people have their rehab consultant, if they can get one, that'd be great. But what can people listening to this keep an eye out for, so they can create their own rehab consultant or find their own quote unquote rehab consultant? What things did you really appreciate that this person kind of brought to the table as they helped you navigate this $50,000 renovation?
Yeah, so this rehab consultant had a background in construction. They also were very familiar with the building codes to know. The building used to be a commercial office space. So it was converted back into its original residential use. So we really needed to be familiar with the differences in code and make sure that we were applying residential code and making sure that any changes were made that needed to be made. And I think, experience is a big one. This consultant also had a lot of experience with this particular type of loan, which is very paperwork intensive. But I think that you can supplement this or find an alternative. So you're right, Liz. He came with the loan. He was approved by the lender. But I mean, you can work around that by partnering with somebody who's done construction before, or by reaching out and asking them to come and walk through a property for you. Hey, what are your pitfalls? You can use an inspector, right? An inspection is a great way to let you know what needs to be done and not. And then also, what this consultant did is he worked with me to oversee the contractor, so that if work wasn't done to par, he had to go fix it or redo it. And, we didn't have a lot of that, but I do find now in the types of loans that I do, where I'll do short-term private money, I've got walkthroughs with my lender to get draws. And that lender also has construction experience. And so if I don't pick up on something, he will. So I still have consultants that I work with. I just don't pay them to be a consultant. They're a consultant because they're invested in my financial success, because I need to pay them back, right? And so they work with me in that capacity as well.
I think you're raising a great point, because I think, to your point with the private money, a lot of investors get nervous that the private lender or their partner is going to come in and pretty much tell them what to do, right? You always hear that if you're someone who's raising money and has private lenders, you really want to manage that and be very careful of how much they weigh in. But to your point, you can still establish your leadership role, because you are the person who's taking the risk, and you are, so, but on the other hand, like you, Steph, Andressa and I, a project we had in Philadelphia, a gentleman who was one of our lenders in the project, ran a huge business in the city and said, let me know if you ever need help. Mm-hmm. I think we used that a couple times. So you can really not just, obviously, their best interest is help us and to help you,
right,
the lenders. But you're raising a great point. So as you're listening to this, ladies, you're raising money, you're bringing private lenders in your business. Don't be afraid to establish your role, obviously. And also don't just shun any sort of involvement from your lender, because if they're doing it in the right way, and there's obviously kind of protocol and established roles, they can add a lot of value, especially if it's somebody who can add value and won't take over your project. I mean, I can't speak about that enough. I think there's always that various conversation around that particular issue. So I just want to mention that.
I love that. And also another thing that I would like to leverage is the city inspector. Sometimes we have very, high concerns about, okay, he's going to come here, find all problems, and this is not going to be good. I want to be there when the city inspector is coming. First, because I want to build a relationship with them. But also, I really want to see if there's any change on the code, or what would you like to be done in a different way here. Another day, they were talking about the different types of tapes that we put on the ductwork. I was like, okay, tell me more. Tell me more about it. So some of the inspectors, I create such a great relationship that I have their cell phone number.
Yep.
So it's so helpful because I want them, okay, tell me here what's the mistake, and I will make sure that this does not happen again, because I will update my scope of work to make sure that that's there. And I always take a quick picture so I remember what he was talking about. And that's exactly what you're saying, Stephanie. Not necessarily he is a paid consultant, but he is. He's teaching me for free, basically. And I want to use him as a source for me. So we can always be aware the lenders, majority of them, if not all of them, have built multi-million dollars. So clearly they have the business experience and they might see some blind spot that I'm not seeing. So leveraging all these sources, I think that's such a great point that you were making, Stephanie. And also working with a realtor that knows what they're doing and can tell you different options like the 203k loan. Because if you get somebody that is just, what I call vanilla, they buy and sell it, and they just know conventional loan, 20% down, that might not be the right people. So going to RIAs and really connecting with other people, because you mentioned a very good point, Stephanie. Your parents gave you like one tip, one suggestion that really changed the course of your, your life, basically.
Yeah.
You went to a completely different spot. So right now, what do you do to gain more knowledge on your next steps that you are where you're taking your business now? What do you do now to get more knowledge to get to where you're looking to be?
So I read. I also do my fair amount of networking. I host a meetup group in my town, and then I attend other meetup groups. I went to the Mid-Atlantic Summit. And I feel like through reading and through networking, what you're doing is you're exposing yourself to people that either perform different strategies, or they're way more seasoned than I am. And through connecting with them, when I host my meetup, I obviously provide value because I'm bringing people together. I also serve as the point contact for a lot of people that are like new into the space. And I find that their questions really help me consider my own business. So I really think it's through networking, and networking when you've found your niche and where you want to call home professionally isn't as bad as, networking can be kind of a misnomer where I think a lot of people. So through networking, you're meeting people that obviously are more seasoned than you and do different strategies. So you're expanding your own scope. And then through reading, you're exposed to mentors that you never would have been in contact with in your daily life, right? And so that's what I love about being able to take books. So like if my mom hadn't mentioned real estate to me, I don't know, maybe I would have gotten there, maybe I wouldn't have, but then all of a sudden I know now a path to go down and read more about. So networking and reading, and Bigger Pockets forum has actually, I didn't start real estate because of Bigger Pockets, but I have made leaps and bounds because of it.
Yeah, no,
And
absolutely.
Connected me to a lot of events too.
Yeah, no, that's great. And it's continuous learning always. To shift gears a little bit, you are an attorney by trade. And for many of us, for all of us, we attorneys are part of this business. And I'm curious to get inside your head, because you have a unique one in that you're an investor and you're an attorney. So I'm curious to hear from you or understand, especially the ladies listening. We all have to vet attorneys out, especially if and it depends on what we need an attorney for, right?
Right.
So there's different attorneys. We have literally 3 different attorneys we work with for 3 different reasons. But I'm curious, what if I'm listening to this and I'm trying to really vet that attorney out. If attorneys are not cheap, they're worth their money, but you got to be able to really have the right one on your team. Mm-hmm. So how would you, with the hat that you have on as an investor, but also knowing what you know as an attorney, what would you recommend to the ladies listening? How do they vet the attorneys they're interviewing to bring on their team the best way possible?
So not only am I an attorney, but I do not represent myself in my own transactions. So I have hired attorneys to represent me in real estate transactions. And Liz, I think I mentioned to you, we have a saying that if you represent yourself, you've got a fool for a client. So you can go too close to a transaction. I mean, I always oversee the process and review the documents, but what I look for is obviously experience. Reputation. So I want to know who's worked with this person before and what have their experiences been. And then I guess one thing that I don't prioritize, but I found it to be a tremendous benefit is when you're asking for referrals, if you get 3 people that give you the same name, usually what you find is you're finding someone that's very well connected. And so my attorney is also very connected with my lender, and it creates a better relationship overall. So we have independent representation, but they, I know that I can call them and ask them questions, and we now have just as much of a friendship and mutual respect. I also give them a lot of business because people come to me. I don't do real estate law, but people come to me because they know I'm a lawyer. So I pass on a lot of referrals. So we have a really good rapport. But it's through their experience and their name. And also they have multiple people in their firm so that I know if I present them with a question, if that one attorney can't answer it, because no attorney can know everything, right? They have a wealth of knowledge that they can pull from.
Great. I want to talk about the big elephant in the room called LegalZoom. Right? We always heard, I just go to LegalZoom and just download a contract there or whatever. In my opinion, the price that I will pay for a mistake, it might be higher than the price that I will pay for an attorney, but that's my personal opinion. I want to hear from you. Is there any type of legal transaction that one should just go to LegalZoom and download a standard contract, or there's no exception? You would highly recommend.
I cannot imagine a time that LegalZoom would be a great option because, so I've never looked into LegalZoom, but I think one of the values of attorneys is being able to ask them, hey, is this applicable for my situation, right? Does this work for me? I mean, we've had attorneys come to us and say, hey, I did a transaction that I know is a permissible transaction, but I didn't realize the consequences that this transaction had for your field. And so now I need you to undo my transaction. And wow. So LegalZoom doesn't do that for you, right? It might give you a statutorily minimum document, but you lose the benefit of having the conversation and making sure that it's appropriate for you.
Yeah, and I'll give you a quick little story that we did that. Downloaded a contract off LegalZoom, one of them, I don't remember. This is a number of years ago, with a partner, potential partner. Went into partnership with, on a project, and it, just didn't end the way, we all would have wanted to, and really had to lean on the contract. I remember sending it to our attorney, who we adore, and he just emailed us back like, I don't understand what this is saying, unfortunately. Like he was. So, and now we've made it right, working through it, but it really was such a lesson that, when you partner with people, you JV with people, I mean, they're lending you money. Obviously that's the easier one, but really anything you're doing has to be in writing and it has to be really prepared by a attorney, and especially with homeowners. If you're flipping property, Andres and I had a property that, we flipped in Philly, and homeowner. There's just some certain things that we had to make right after closing, and we wanted to honor that, but we really wanted to put it in writing because we're like, we can't have this person keep coming back like literally every week with something new. We bought the home, but we felt like it was the right thing to do. So but we had our attorney draw it up and bingo bango, and we felt more comfortable with that. Could we have saved the $500? Maybe, but we felt more comfortable, and that was the right, you have to make the right investment for the big picture.
Yeah, and I think it's important to recognize that you've got so much more flexibility and creativity in your own head, and you're the one that knows your situation best. So, I mean, I've done leases, for example, with 3-month notice periods, month-to-month leases with 3-month notice periods because the tenant wanted to not be locked down. But I don't know that and it actually had a 3-month notice period with de-escalating payments if she moved and couldn't find somebody. And you can't find a lease that says that, a generic lease that says that. So, you really have to be willing to rise to the occasion that your situation presents itself. So
yeah. No, absolutely. And to that point with your portfolio, so you do buy and holds.
Yep.
And I think what you mentioned in one of our notes back and forth, and I think this is phenomenal, but your portfolio has a vacancy rate of less than 1%. Yeah. I mean, if we polled, 10 landlords, I don't know if any of those 10 landlords could say that. I mean, that's really phenomenal. So as you reflect on that, I mean, people don't think about vacancy enough when they're buying. They just think about the potential, right? Because that's what people think about. They do their little cash flow analysis. Great, I can make this amount of money. But you have to factor in vacancy because that's going to happen.
It's your biggest expense as a landlord.
Yeah.
Because you don't have the income. You've got, just the expense in making the property right for the next tenant and spiffed up. I mean, the best thing you can do is have a tenant renew their lease.
Absolutely.
A good paying tenant renew their lease. Yeah. So
how have you been able to do that? Yeah, that's a phenomenal percentage.
Thank you. I've been very fortunate. I think it's because the properties that I buy, they're mostly single families or duplexes. So they tend to keep tenants longer. There's a lower turnover rate in general than if you'd have apartments or, 6 families or something like that. They're in B neighborhoods generally. So you've got families that move in or couples that move in and they're comfortable. The renovations that I do, I would say that they could possibly be considered over renovating, but I really enjoy the process. And I do think that putting out a good product means you get good tenants. And a lot of my tenants, they're responsible for the landscaping, for example. And so they treat it as their home. They plant roses. They do a great job making it their home. And then all of a sudden they're going to be there for 3, 4, 5 years at a time. I mean, I have properties that I've had absolutely no turnover since I bought it. Because, they want to stay. They want to stay and they're in good neighborhoods and good tenants. And one of the other things that I've learned through networking is the more positive contact you have with the tenants, the more positive they feel about their house. So starting at the very beginning from when I receive an application, I really try to make sure that all of my communication with my tenant is about their satisfaction and their happiness. My signature line is to your happiness, right? So I'm really letting them know that I want them to thrive in their home with my company, Sunrise Real Estate. And then I have checkups on them. I have automatic emails that go out after the day of their move-in. I welcome them home. I walk them through the property and make sure they really understand it so they feel completely at home in this house. And then I have, a 1-month check-in. How's it going? Do you have any issues that are arising? So I don't want them to be silent and not let me know if there's a problem and suffer through it and then, build resentment. So I find communication. I reach out and solicit, how are you doing? And then I have a 6-month check-in, like, hey, can you believe time's flying? How are you doing? And then I send out, holiday notes and things like that. Happy 4th of July from Sunrise Real Estate. Just let them know that we're here and keep putting out messages of positivity to them.
It's very personal. And I think that really matters nowadays where you are just, majority of the tenants are, okay, tenant from unit number 1, number 2, number 3, you barely know their names. I think that makes totally difference in your world where you have the tenants, you have your attorney business, and everything else. Outsourcing might be a very high item in your list. I'm curious to know, what do you outsource right now, and what type of softwares or companies do you use?
So the first thing I started outsourcing was rent collection. I thought that was the easiest decision to make. And I use payyourrent.com. It's been great. I've used it. I think it's the first software I've used. I've used it continuously for probably 3 years, maybe. Their customer service is good, and they also have the option to opt into credit reporting for the tenants. So I've done lease options with a few of my tenants, and a lot of them have not strong credit for whatever reason, and they love this feature. Not many landlords offer it, so it's a competitive advantage for me. And in fact, this is kind of ironic. I do have a vacancy right now, which came up since we talked, Liz. But the reason why it's vacant is because they were not in a position to buy a house. I've had them for years, but their credit grew so much in living with me, they went and bought a house. So,
oh, look at that.
But now I have some vacancy. So that's one software that I use. I live and die by Podio, honestly. I use Podio for everything, and I've been outsourcing. So I did a lot of the basic infrastructure, but some of the more complex issues I outsourced. So I outsourced building the time cards for the assistants that I have. So I had an assistant build a time card for my assistants. I outsource.
What's a time card?
It's like keeping track of my assistant's hours.
Oh, okay. Literally like just tracking time. Okay. I'm is this like a special? Okay. Gotcha. Sorry.
It's a digital time card.
Okay. Gotcha. Sorry.
So I outsource having my direct mail printed and hand addressed. I have someone, physically handwrite the envelopes and stuff them and send them off. I'm now looking to outsource my bookkeeping, which is, it is time. I outsource. So I'm also in the process of hiring or training virtual assistants to do most of my administrative work. So I've spent the past 3 years understanding how I want to manage my business, and the policies that I want to implement, and this, the timing, and preparing my lease to the way that I want it. And so now I have a very comprehensive set of policies and standard operating procedures that I have handed over to my virtual assistant. And every week we're going through and I'm giving him one more task, and we're running through, practice rounds. So this virtual assistant is with me. He's doing, maybe 1 to 2 hours a week right now. And I definitely see that ramping up, and
That's
being
cool.
a lot more hours for them as they get more comfortable with the work that I'm doing.
I see. When you talk about SOPs, I think that's such an important point, because a lot of people want to outsource. However, they don't have the standard operating procedures in place.
Right.
So then they get frustrated because the person might not be doing the way that they would do. So I think that without that, it's just like planning to fail if you outsource without the standard operating procedures. I'm curious to know, how did you put that in place? Did you really track your actions and really jot it down, or did you have any other software that you used?
So after I performed the task a few times, I would kind of write a high level outline of what I did, just, one word, first this, then this, and this. And then I started to write instructions for myself with links to the document that I used, and then instructions exactly how to complete that document. And then I took it a step further, and I would do a video screen capture of me performing the task and save it. So I use Soapbox for this, which is a Google Chrome add-on, which is free and awesome, and
nice.
Super easy to edit.
There you go.
Yeah, because I am not technologically savvy. So the fact that I have so much technological outsourcing is pretty impressive. But so I then give the written procedures, the links, and the video to my my virtual assistant and have them do a dry run. And then we go back and revisit and say, okay, what was the point that was confusing, or why didn't this turn out the way I expected it to? And then you've got to revise it. So now, like, it is very time intensive, but it's front loaded. So I now can just ask them, hey, prepare a lease or prepare a renewal, or, hey, we got an application. I need you to take the next steps to get all of their documentation in place. And they know what to do, but it took us hours to get there, but I don't have to repeat those hours anymore.
Steph, I question about that. You often hear, I think most people would agree that outsourcing, giving up the things that you're not good at, right? I mean, I don't think most people would be like, no, that's a stupid idea. I want to do everything that I hate. I mean, no one would say that, right? But I think for a lot of people, especially what Andres and I are going through with some of our business, projects that we have going on, you start to say, okay, there's value here. We need to do this. Okay. So we start to write the stuff down, the instructions. When you give it over to someone, what check-ins have you done? Because you and I know when you've done something yourself for a long time, you know it, you've written it down, but it's different when someone else does it. So I'm curious, what strategies did you put in place, maybe ongoing communication that helped kind of mitigate those problems or mitigate the disconnects that can happen and quite honestly will happen. There's it's not to say, oh, I created an SOP, here you go, good luck. It's just not going to happen. So I'm curious, what's worked for you? Because you're clearly doing something right. What has worked for you in that process to make sure your instructions, your links, your videos, all the material you're putting together is clearly conveyed?
I start off by making sure that I'm hiring the right virtual assistant. So I hired, to get to this one, I hired 3, and I had them each perform the same exact task using the same exact information to find out who asked me the best questions, who was the most responsive, and who did the best product, right? And so it really quickly went from 3 to 2 to 1. And the key to this virtual assistant is I pay a little bit more for him. I probably pay like $1.50 more per hour than I would for other virtual assistants, but I don't really find that to be a problem in the scheme of things, but more importantly, the reason why is because he has his own company. He's the point of contact. He takes the information, makes sure that we completely agree on the process, and then he has someone assigned to me that does all of my work all the time. And so I'm getting the same person, through the stream of things. I'm getting that same person over and over versus being moved around. So that's one, is just hiring the right person with the right structure. And then 2, I have dry runs. So when I was teaching this virtual assistant how to do an application, I put in an application for myself and I said, treat it as if you're vetting me, and I want you to email me rather than, this other tenant. So I don't let the virtual assistant on their first try reach out to third parties. But I mean, even when we've given the approval and I've given them the green light, okay, yeah, you can now reach out to third parties, I still have to go back through. I just make sure I'm CC'd on everything. And if you want to be completely removed, you'd be BCC'd, so the person couldn't get back to you, but I'm CC'd. And if I see something that doesn't look right, I just reach out and like, hey, we're working through administrative changes. Thanks for your patience. And a lot of people find it funny, honestly, that like it's a headache for the landlord and she's trying to grow her business. So
I think that's terrific. I think it's food for thought for the ladies listening, no matter if you have 2 properties, 1 property, or hundreds of units. It's something that we all need more of, but it's really that hard work of putting it on paper, getting it documented, and doing the work. So I remember chatting with you earlier, Steph, you said something really, really smart, when we talked first, or not that you're not talking wonderfully now as well, but, but you said something really, it made a real impact on me. You said, start small. So for the ladies listening, and the ladies listening know there's something that you have to let go of. And we all have that something like, I want to let go of X. Start small. Start with one thing. And I think that was a great point you said. You don't have to start like, do these 19 things. Like, you might be setting that person up to fail. So I think that was great advice and really a nice way to begin the process versus too much.
and to expand on that, so I don't tend to say, all right, go vet a tenant. I don't give them a big process to take on. I say, ask them for their a copy of their driver's license. Small tasks that are easy to follow that build up to aggregate into a process, and then they start to see how the pieces fit together, and eventually they'll be able to take over and do an entire process with multiple little steps. But in the meantime, I also think just for morale and relationship with the virtual assistant, you want to make sure that you're setting them up for success. And I think the right time to implement this, if you think that you've got a duplex and you live in it and that's just, you don't need these processes, you might be right. You might not need them. But while you're in a position and it's easy to manage, I think that is the best time for you to start implementing them. You're always going to change them, but the more processes you have in place and systems that you can outsource at a small level, that's how you can scale without losing your mind, really. And so I've been able to grow from 2 to 10 units. I mean, I'm a lawyer, I'm a commercial real estate agent, and I manage these units with very little time intensity. Most of my time is spent on building the process, so, or finding other deals.
That's great. That's awesome stuff. So the ladies listening, we probably have like 90 other questions about outsourcing, because it's kind of where Andres and I are right now in a lot of ways. So we'll schedule some follow-up time now. But no, you've been amazing here on our show here. How can the ladies listening, if they want to get in touch with you, connect with you, learn more about what you're up to, how can they do that?
Yeah. So they can email me. I'm at Stephanie, that's STEPHANIE, at sunrisebuyshouses.com. I'm also on Bigger Pockets. I have a profile there, Stephanie Cabral.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
For the ladies that are listening, all this great information you will find on our show notes, so don't rush. Now we're going to transition to our Fabulous 3 question. Are you ready, though?
I'm ready.
Okay. The first one is, what's the most transformational book you have ever read?
The E-Myth by Michael Gerber. He really harps on making these systems, right? So this is how I got the idea. He wants everything to be repeatable, predictable, and delegable.
Totally. Amen to that.
Yeah.
The second question is, what's the most powerful routine you do to create a financially free and balanced life?
I wake up early, maybe not as early as Liz. I try to wake up around 5:30 or 5:45 every morning. What works for me, I'm a snoozer. So I actually set my phone, which has my alarm, in a different room. So I have to get up
man,
my room and shut the door behind me and go turn off my phone. So that's pretty much the only way I get out of bed. But once I'm up, I'll do a few quick exercises to get the blood flowing. Either do a stretch or listen to some sort of like affirmation in the morning, and then do 3 hours worth of work before anybody else is up or able to bother me.
There we go. The last question is, which women, famous or not, has inspired you the most?
So I was matched through Colliers in a women's diversity mentorship program. I was matched with Cindy Cook. Cindy is a multifamily broker, which is kind of understating how powerful she is in the Phoenix market. She is a power broker. She's consistently the number 1 performing female agent, and I think it was 2016. She made the Everest Club, so she was in the top 5 agents in all of Colliers. She is just a powerhouse of an agent, and has created an incredible business for her family. And so I had the pleasure and honor of working with her for about a year in learning not only underwriting skills, due diligence process, the substantive information about multifamily from Cindy. But one of the things that she taught me, it wasn't a formal lesson, but I just saw her interact with people and what was valuable to her and how she built her business. Networking, going back to this concept of how you expand your sphere of influence in your education, networking for her was not about going out there and proving that she's the best agent, or, she didn't go out there with anything to prove. Networking for her is about going out and meeting friends in an industry that you truly enjoy. And so she has been so successful because she's naturally there. She's there because she wants to be. And I think that was one of the biggest takeaways from watching her interact. So she's been a huge inspiration, both substantively and in a way of designing your life to make it so that it's fun in what you do.
Beautiful.
That is beautiful. Well, Stephanie, thank you so much for being on our show and adding all your wonderful wisdom and in a lot of different aspects. So thank you for being with us. Thanks for your time.
Thank you so much for having me. This was a blast.
Thank you so much, Stephanie. Talk to you soon.
Okay.
Bye. If you enjoyed this podcast and want to receive updates on our next interviews, go to our website, therealestateinvestor.com. There, you can subscribe to our show, become part of our investor community, and get updates on upcoming episodes.
If you like our show, please share it with other women who would benefit. And don't forget to leave us a rating on iTunes. We'd really appreciate it. And as always, we encourage you to take one action as a result of today's show and put it into motion so you can live both a financially free and balanced life. Thanks for spending time with us.
Ciao.